Welcome, Chris, to the IoT For All Podcast. Thanks for being here this week.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Pleasure to join you here on the show.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's great to have you. I'm excited to have this conversation, but before we get into it, love it if you could give a quick introduction about yourself and the company to our audience.
My name's Chris Baird. I am the president and CEO here at OptConnect. OptConnect, we really do a couple of really interesting things, but essentially we offer a fully managed connectivity solution that typically allows our customers to focus on their core operations instead of having to be IoT experts. So whether it's medical devices or manufacturing, retailers, people using ATMs, deploying, whatever it might be, they all have a core focus of their operation. We allow them to just stay focused on that. So we handle all the IoT, the connectivity for them specifically. We help them remove complexities and improve scalability.
So are you bringing kind of end-to-end solutions to them, or are you helping mainly when it comes to the connectivity piece?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Predominantly is around connectivity, specifically fully managing that connectivity. You or I, we use internet at our home. It gets piped to the internet service provider, brings it to our front doorstep. And oftentimes we don't know how that happens. We're not responsible if they cut the line upstream. Well, it's very similar in IoT connectivity. A lot of our customers, they rely on their application absolutely has to connect to the internet. They don't want to be the expert upstream. They leave that to us. We work with the carriers to make sure that the devices, the hardware, we have all the tool systems in place to make sure that that's a headache-free experience so the customers can just use the connectivity, not have to be the experts.
Are you agnostic to the different kinds of use cases and applications of IoT technology, and you're fit in anywhere depending on the environment, the region, what the company's looking to do?
Initially, we were not. We were very, very use case specific. But what we realized as we perfected our solution in this one particular industry is that IoT looks very similar across the board. If you think about it in the terms of a device that's getting deployed out into the real world, typically it's unattended, which means there's nobody there to watch it, fix it when it breaks. And typically that is, it's providing some important or critical function, whether it's communicating information about a transaction or a sensor monitoring a certain application, a transaction that needs to be completed so the customer can, vend a good or whatever it might be, or medical device that's sending critical information to a healthcare provider. Today, we definitely are agnostic. OptConnect plays in some 50 different end markets within IoT. The commonality across all those being some type of unattended equipment that's getting deployed, providing some mission critical function where a customer needs to have that connectivity at a high reliability. And oftentimes traditional connectivity is not an option. Wi-Fi is not an option. Getting DSL or a copper landline, we used to be very common, very difficult for those customers to have. Cellular is so ubiquitous. It's a great solution today for those customers.
Yeah, one of the questions people come and ask us is just when it comes to selecting a network provider or what connectivity do they need for a solution. It's oftentimes a spot where they're not always too sure. And I think a lot of that comes into play when the solution that they're building is potentially expanding beyond one small region and into others. And how do you ensure connectivity is going to stay available throughout the whatever environment the asset or the thing that's being tracked or the sensor is going to be in? How do you kind of think about that in the way you've set up your business, you've expanded your business and so forth?
That is a very common reality for a lot of folks these days deploying IoT. They don't know what they don't know. And it's a unknown situation that gets them. We think about this a couple different ways. So first of all, we know that the carriers are very dynamic. As they look to build out ubiquitous coverage, they're deploying 5G. They're also turning off old technology at the same time. And sometimes applications or areas that have coverage one day may not the next. Not all things are created equal. So, but what we know is the carriers are starting to deploy more and more and more. We have over 10,000 customers. We manage over 1 million deployments. We know through all of our data where the hotspots are. We know who's good in which area and who to avoid in certain areas. So that's one way. We have an incredible database where we'll actually help customers do a virtual site survey. So initially we can wean that out. Second, we think about software and the important role the software plays here. So our back office systems help watch and monitor if there is a change in the field We're watching for that. We're alerting the carriers. And as soon as they might have an issue, an outage, we're watching for that, alerting them, helping them resolve that. Because if you think about it, we have over 1 million deployments. Those are fixed locations. They don't move around. So they are constantly monitoring the carrier, and we'll help the carrier understand where their problem is. We call it the joke that's not very funny when we have to help them understand where their problems might be. And the third way we think about it is through our hardware. We have proprietary hardware that we have built that serves pretty critical function, actually. We have on-board intelligence that's constantly watching and monitoring for the connection, taking very specific autonomous action if certain conditions are met, up to and including shelling over from one carrier to another, not just on multi-MZ or an eSIM, but actual physical SIMs. Our devices have multiple carriers baked right in. We had an issue recently where a customer called. There was a big nationwide outage. It was on the news. People's cell phones weren't working. Customer called and said, "When is my device going to fail?" And we were able to tell them, guess what? It already did. The carrier you saw on the news was having an issue. We caught it. You don't have to do anything. It's already been resolved. So kind of an interesting way of thinking about that.
We've seen a lot of consolidation happen in the kind of connectivity in the network, the MVNO, just in this space in general within IoT. We've been kind of monitoring it since we got into the IoT space in 2016, just seeing what kind of consolidation was going to happen. And with the recent acquisitions that you all have had, what was the decision behind that? As far as some other companies wouldn't, take the acquisition approach or haven't taken the acquisition approach. It seems like it gives you a pretty big advantage and a leg up in kind of creating a global managed wireless connectivity platform that companies can use. Well, just take me through kind of from a business standpoint, what was so attractive about this kind of opportunity? Because we don't talk a lot about the consolidation, but it's a reality in this space.
For sure. And we're happy to be a part of it. We've had the pleasure of meeting with a lot of different businesses that have a particular niche or do something that's very specific to them. I think about this a couple of ways, specifically global reach. Today, in a shrinking world, an ever-connected world, the ability to connect everywhere is incredibly important. And now today, OptConnect has expanded to about 60 different countries where we can provide our services. Our acquisitions, both in Europe and Latin America, they give us a solid foothold. They allow us to take relationships with existing customers and help them expand so they don't have to go find new service providers just because they're growing. So those are really important for us. I think about this a different way as well. The strategic growth side, there are sectors that are important to OptConnect that we have not been able to get to, whether that's transportation, digital out of home, smart farming. The demand for wireless connectivity is skyrocketing, and the trend to partner for that is also growing. OptConnect is well positioned to capitalize, if you will, on those trends as a result. We can do it ourselves. That might be the long road. We can partner with experts who have done it, and that's a faster road. We're in a luxury position right now where we're able to partner with some of the best companies in the world to provide a robust network for our customers to be able to do and expand. Our most recent acquisition based in the Netherlands, this significantly boosts our ability to serve the European markets from a 4G, 5G IoT perspective. And the company brings an incredible backdrop of wireless IoT connectivity experience. So acquisitions are an important role for OptConnect. Helps us get to market quicker, helps our customers get to speed to revenue faster, and it's an important part of our strategic growth plan.
What's so unique about these different regions that you've kind of now been having more access into due to the acquisitions that people listening to this may not be familiar with? They might not understand what's unique about connectivity and network providers in the Netherlands versus the UK versus Germany versus the US. Like why it is so important to the thing you mentioned earlier is these companies that have more of a niche focus and bringing them under one umbrella to do exactly what you said, not only help you grow more customers, but provide growth opportunities because of your expansive network and ability to have a global reach with the connectivity that they've been a part of working with you.
Well, a lot of people think about the United States of America and often believe that is also true in the European unions. It's true in South America. I'll tell you, it is not the United States of South America. It is not the United States of Europe. It is very different. It's amazing to me how much can change when the geography doesn't change. Your spectrum doesn't care about borders and lines on maps, but I'll tell you what, regulation sure does. And so when you get into a country where spectrum, which is considered by almost every country as a natural resource, is managed completely different, the regulations, the laws, the rules, the data, the privacy, the security, everything changes from one border to the other, even though from a geographic perspective, they may not change that much. So it's very important for us to be able to play, and acquisitions have strengthened our presence in each of those markets, but we've had to quickly learn what can we do, what can't we do. In the US, we're able to deploy centrally. We have a hub and spoke model. Everything is central to our Salt Lake City, Utah, and Silicon Slopes facility here, where we're able to quickly deploy all over the country. Well, that's not the case. That's not the case when you get into a Latin American country and ship to a different Latin American country. The rules, the regulations really prevent some of that. So having presence in each of those areas allows us to bring the same level of service that customers expect, but do it in a much different way operationally that still is kind of unperceived by the customer.
So one of the things you mentioned early on, talking about the fully managed service capabilities and what that allows for organizations that you work with, that your customers to do and focus on their own while you take care of this piece. I've got two pieces to this question. One is, can you talk to our audience a little bit about the value of why a managed service, or what a managed service really does and what value it provides organizations? And the other side is, what is the alternative? Like, how else would people be doing this? And then you can compare, why that managed service is so valuable for somebody to explore, because this has been something that has definitely been brought up many times before, but never really broken down into, why should I make sure that what I'm doing has a managed service component to it, because it allows me to do X, Y, and Z.
I love this question, specifically because our customers have asked us for so many of these features. I love answering this by thinking about the alternative first. So maybe let's start there. In the absence of a managed service, an individual deploying IoT actually has a lot of areas that they need to be expert in. There's an old expression, it's not actually that old, but there's an expression that says there are the known knowns, there are the unknown knowns, and then there are the unknown unknowns, and those are the ones that tend to get you. For IoT, it is oftentimes a lot more comprehensive than meets the eye. If you think of the image of the iceberg, the little bit that floats on the top, there is a whole lot more down underneath, and it assimilates very nicely to IoT. There's so much more behind the scenes that is required. So a lot of customers, or a lot of the audience, may think deploying IoT is as simple as getting a SIM card with the carrier and a piece of hardware and plugging those two together and deploying it. Well, we know that those are perhaps the most important elements, but there are dozens. In fact, we just went through an exercise where we identified 44 additional points that need to be taken into consideration when deploying IoT at scale. This begins clear from pre-deployment through the design stage, making sure that the device is spec'd out, getting it certified, working through that entire process, all the way through to managed devices, all the way out in the field, or deployed devices when they're out in the field living their life cycle. What all needs to happen in order to make that entire process smooth? Well, we know it's incredibly complex. So what I like to say is that we work really hard to make that process really simple. Our fully managed service allows our customers to focus on their core operations so that they don't have to be the expert in designing. They don't have to be the RF expert. They don't have to be the expert in certification, PTCRB, for example, or FCC certifications. They don't even have to be experts in designing the boards and the chips and understanding which modules are end of life and which ones aren't. We do all of that as part of our managed service. So there's an entire stack of pre-deployed services that we bring. And if a customer chooses our managed service, we've already done all this for them. So they don't have to sit back and wonder, who's going to help me manage the design process? Who's going to help me manage the deployment phase when I'm rolling it out, when I'm managing inventory? Lead times during the pandemic that we just have gone through, we saw lead times go from 12 to 18 weeks, which we used to think were long, all the way north of 50, 70, 80 weeks. We saw our customers that chose a managed service, they never experienced more than 24-hour lead time because we deployed our capital in such a way that we had the inventory, we saw the trends, we pre-bought, we held inventory at no cost to the customer. They could call today, we would ship today at scale. We could deploy thousands of devices a day. And we did that all through the pandemic. We were one of the few people that had inventory on the shelves ready to go for our customers. And then the last element of it is when the device is in the field, it's lived for a while, maybe the deployment goes well and it's living its life cycle, and then something changes. The customer changes an application, a security setting gets changed, a firmware needs to be pushed, a carrier has an outage, there's an overage, nobody knows why. We like to ask the customer, who's helping you manage all of that post-deployment? It takes a team, it takes an army, and we have all that done, built, and deployed through systems and tools that help automate our customers so that if any situation arises, there's an army of code that attempts to resolve any of the issues and mitigate them before they happen or quickly resolve them once they do, all backed up by a customer support center, one of the best in the business, award-winning, that can help and resolve any issue in a single call.
As we've seen the IoT space grow, so many good examples of why a managed service provides value and can provide value with all the different pieces of a solution, whether you're just focused, where you're doing end-to-end or you're just focusing on, the hardware, what have you. There's a lot of friction along the way. And oftentimes the friction is what causes deployments and causes the growth to not happen in a lot of these deployments. And the more companies who understand that and kind of take that under their own kind of purview and offer that as something that removes that friction from organizations, it just helps increase the likelihood that these deployments are going to be successful. And I think that's something that people really need to understand and focus on when they start getting into this space. So the fact that you've thought that through and you're really kind of focused on that is fantastic to hear.
We spend a lot of time on it. We often hear from customers who say, man, this used to take me months to figure out, and now it takes me minutes. With OptConnect, I can open the device out of the box with confidence, knowing it works exactly as the last one, exactly as the next one. I connect the antenna that I know you guys have sourced, you've tested, you've made sure is exactly what I need for my deployment with my carrier in my region. And I know that when I turn it on, it's connected to the tower because we've already gone through, pre-configured, pre-provisioned, and pre-activated that device. They're plugging in and walking away 30 seconds later with a business-grade internet speed in the form of a router, and then they're done.
One of the last questions I want to ask you before we wrap up here is around, given the acquisitions and your expansion into other regions of the world, what have been the biggest challenges that you either already experienced with global expansion or you kind of anticipate you will experience with the global expansion?
Going to different regions and just having operational alignment as you go from region to region to region has been something that's been really eye-opening for us. Something that's really core to us is our culture. Culture integration at the company has been really, it's been fun. We've had a lot of fun as a leadership team. We have a group of managers who looks at this specifically and says, how do we create a unified company now that we are no longer in a unified building? We're over, we have hundreds of employees in different countries all over the world. How do we balance autonomy with local teams? How do we make sure our broader company values and our goals align specifically? So operational alignment, cultural alignment, those are really important to us. Regulation, the regulatory environments expanding into Europe, everything that comes with the privacy laws, trade regulations, telecommunication standards, making sure that we comply with all of those. That's a full-time job, actually. And those are the things that if you don't do intentionally, you end up unintentionally getting slapped and figuring out. But then just managing growth in new verticals, those are really important areas for us. This is the reason why we wanted to expand in the first place, adapting to the new markets, making sure we have the right resources allocated in the right areas, whether it's EV charging, which could be different from Europe to the US to, as I said, digital out of home. Every industry has its specific challenges. Every industry in every country has their specific challenges. So managing all of that has been important. One of the things we think we do really well is the supply chain, the technology alignment. We've been able to bring our secret sauce to our companies that we've partnered with through acquisitions. We've been able to immediately reduce their supply chain from months down to days, bringing that speed to market much closer to the customer. And that's been a lot of fun to help innovate and really be the disruptors in the space. So a lot of people will tell you that supply chain is a disruption for them. We think about it the other way around. It's an advantage.
You mentioned something I actually wanted to quickly follow up on is, so you talked about the opportunity to get into new verticals, new use cases, things like that. One of the topics that has come up before is around hard to access places where there's limited connectivity, or, it's just something that connectivity has been a problem. With the growth, the global expansion, and just your experience in the space, how do you tackle that? Or how should people listening to this be thinking about approaching, if I have a potential use case where I'm going to put hardware in something in a place that's hard to access, how achievable is it still? And what are the considerations that need to be thought about?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love the innovation that's happening in the space, that's happening really quickly. I look forward to the day when, for example, low Earth orbit connectivity becomes more affordable for everybody. I think that's a real possibility, that we could see another player show up on a global stage without some of the same limitations that'll help our customers get to difficult to reach areas. Today, there are some really good solutions that exist on how to get, better penetration in places like parking garages, basements, elevators. Those typically have, limited signal penetration, just given the raw materials that they're surrounded by. OptConnect, we have a lot of experience in delivering consistent performance in these conditions through proprietary technology, through the use of our strong partnerships around RF boosting and technology. We partner with some of the best in the industry to make sure that we're gathering those redundant partners from a telecoms perspective. Those are really important. But then there's the second challenge, which is the rural areas. And, especially as you look at places through Latin America, or even in the Midwest here in the US, right, where you get these large expanses where population is scarce and the carriers haven't fully invested there. Our fully managed services, along with some of our specialized modems, they help bridge the gap. They can help boost and the cellular technology, the performance. We can operate in a minimal local infrastructure. And then I can envision the day when all of that will be supplemented, like I said, by some type of hybrid or a satellite solution that is going to be reachable for everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to unlock so much potential for people. We're starting to see it now, satellite companies getting launched and how they're trying to mesh and work with other types of terrestrial networks, and how they're working with cellular, how they're working with, LoRa, whatever it is, just to provide wider connectivity. Because at the end of the day, if a solution is going to move or be in different regions or travel between regions, the ability to have connectivity at all times is what's going to enable them to see the most value. So companies that can help deliver that are going to probably win at the end of the day. So yeah, thank you for taking the time. This has been an awesome conversation. For our audience who wants to learn more about what you have going on, follow up with any questions, learn about maybe what's kind of coming out of the pipe next, what's the best way they can do that?
The best place is obviously our website, OptConnect.com, but the funnest place is going to be places like LinkedIn or some of the other areas where we're socially active. So Instagram, you're going to see a lot behind the scenes if you go to the Instagram page that you'll be able to find from our website. More the professional side, you'll see a lot of the use cases, things that we're doing on the LinkedIn page of OptConnect. You'll be able to quickly link to all of our partners, the acquisitions that we've made. Those are some of the best places to stay quickly connected with everything that's happening at OptConnect.
Really appreciate the time. This has been a great conversation. We're going to get this out really quickly to our audience so they can kind of stay up to date on what's going on there. And just there's a lot of good learnings, I think, here. Just understanding kind of how companies are approaching, the network, the connectivity space, which is a big kind of key player in success when it comes to IoT deployments. So truly appreciate your time and look forward to hopefully talking again soon.
Likewise. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it.